Film is delicate. Too much tension, it'll snap.
What we off?
This place is held together with elastic bands.
We're threatening power cuts, Mr. Clancy.
And we're out of train.
We can't bring chips inside.
Tony jelly?
A huge rat.
And all I hear from you is oil fixes.
This is looking great. It's a credit to you.
Conway's going to make a cash offer.
I have a number in mind.
This is fate, forcing you to sell the place.
You're selling the cinema.
Trying to do what's best for everyone.
How would you know what's best for everyone?
Sergeant, they're killing each other across the street.
There's a bit of throw of shit.
Watch everything on video anyways.
Get out!
No.
All this frustration, all this anger.
Stop it! Your brothers! Stop!
It's because you're afraid to let the cinema go, because when you do, you've nowhere to hide anymore.
The cinema brings them together for an experience that's so much more than the picture. That's why they come.
Showtime!
Powerful stuff.
Right, lads?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to FNI Wrapchat in the Headstuff podcast studios here in central Dublin. We really hope you enjoy this episode that's coming up with David Gleeson. David Gleeson is a filmmaker from Limerick who has made some really interesting and enjoyable features over the last 25 years, 30 years, Cowboys and Angels, The Frontline, and his most recent effort, Once Upon a Time in a Cinema. It's a really beautiful, nostalgic look back on cinema-going culture with a fantastic ensemble cast, which is really impressive considering the amount of moving pieces that they had to contend with in the shooting of the film. It's out this weekend, it's out across the country, and it's a heartwarming experience that is really enjoyed by a group of people. So bring along a friend, support the film, support Irish film, and thank you for watching our show and engaging with our podcast and Film Network Ireland in general over the last 15 years. Hello everybody and welcome back to FNI Wrapchat here in Dublin City Centre. It's been a while since we've done an episode, but we're really excited today to welcome Mr. David Gleeson.
Correct.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome
Thank
to
you
the
so
studio.
It's a pleasure to be here.
There's a lot to talk about. Once Upon a Time in the Cinema is, I think, a remedy or an antidote to what we're experiencing in the world right now. I think that escapism is kind of where a lot of creatives and filmmakers and people live. But if you can tell me a little bit, I suppose, about the inception of the film, how it came about and why. It seems like a really personal story to you, but I suppose where the genesis of the project in general came from.
Well, my family has been in the cinema business I'm the third generation. So my grandfather opened up a cinema in Cappamore, County Limerick in 1942. Wow. So it's kind of an interesting story in itself. When the parish was being electrified in the 1930s, teams of German engineers went from parish to parish, and they built these fabricated structures, and they lived in them, and then they moved on. So my grandfather bought one of those structures and used it as a community hall and rented it out to these travelling showmen. And these were like, one of them was called Billy Walsh's Talkies. And they were guys who would travel around the country with a tractor and a trailer, carrying cans of Laurel Hardy short films or Charlie Chaplin short films. And they would set up in a local community hall, and people would come in to watch this show. And then they would move on to the next cinema. to the next community hall. So it was like a travelling cinema, and they were called travelling showmen. And so this guy used to arrive once a month, and my grandfather saw the money that he was pulling in, so he thought, okay, there's money in this cinema business, so I'm going to open up a cinema full time. And so he opened up the cinema, and they showed movies 2-3 nights a week. But then my grandfather quickly lost interest, so my father, at the age of 12, quit school and went into the film business full time. And so that was in about 1942. And then in the 70s, him and his brother, who were in business together, they opened up another cinema in Kilmallock on the Limerick-Cork border. And then in the 1980s, my father opened up the cinema in Neenah. And he finally retired after 79 years in the film business in the year 2020. So he had the longest film career in the world, I believe. Certainly the longest cinema career, certainly in this country, 79 years continuous. And he was at the cinema 51 weeks a year, you know. So that was my background. And I grew up working in cinemas, you know, like if your family owns a pub or, you know, or a shop, you end up working behind the counter. So I ended up working in the cinema from a very, very young age, starting at the age of about 5 when you were given a paper bag and a paintbrush, and we had to sweep the fag ash and the cigarette butts out of the ashtrays on the backs of seats. So that's how long ago that was. So I did every single job in the cinema, and my film school was the cinema. And so they say, write about what you know. You know, well, this is the world that I knew best. And it had always been in my mind that if anyone was born to make a movie about a cinema, it was me. But I never really knew. Every time I went to make one, you came up against a brick wall that is Cinema Paradiso, you know. So how do you top that? And so I never knew how to do it, but it was always in my mind. And then just after COVID, actually, I was driving down Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles,
Well, of course you were.
As you do. And there's a famous intersection. I lived there for a few years. And there's a famous intersection at the intersection of Bel Air and Sunset Boulevard. And it's famous because the Epstein brothers, who wrote Casablanca, they never knew how to end that movie. They were kind of rewriting it as it was in production. And they stopped at that intersection and they both turned to each other and said, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. That's where that line from Casablanca came from. Wow. So that spot was always kind of sacred to me. Every time I stopped at that intersection, I always thought, man, this is where one of my favourite movies was conceived. And right at that intersection, the idea for this movie popped into my head. A movie set in a cinema told in real time during a movie.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's really interesting.
No easy feat.
No. But, you know, that didn't faze me. That made it interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
But just to have that concept, you know, I thought, I can write that, and that's original. And immediately I knew it would have to be split into 5 reels, etc.
Yeah. I think there's lots of beautiful elements, and cinematically it's shot incredibly well, particularly because there's quite a lot of movement. You know, on different floors, a lot of tracking, a lot of following characters.
Correct.
That's in itself quite a difficult thing to do. But having a sense of even the very subtle kind of transitions, using film reels and cigarette burns on the shots in between the different acts, as it were, was really, really beautiful. It really is truly a gorgeous love letter to... and I was reminded recently going to the cinema, because every so often you fall out of love with it. Yeah. And just going in for that communal experience. And obviously there's a lot of parallels also with, you know, the fight in this particular story, the fight against VHS, or trying to stay relevant in a world where people can take this stuff home. Yeah. Were you inspired by the battle of streamers in cinema?
Yeah, very much so. Normally I'm not hugely into allegory, you know, but this was the movie set in 1984. One of the chief business concerns with our main character is the rise of VHS and how it threatens his industry. And I was very conscious of this is an easy way for a general audience to grasp the concept of the cinema being in threat.
Yeah.
As it is right now, but it's too early to make the movie now, because we don't know the outcome. We're threatened by streaming and the rise of AI, which is a more difficult concept to grasp. But the rise of VHS is something we all lived through. So that was a commentary I wanted to make. But I also wanted to comment on the fact that cinema has always been threatened. There's always been something. And audience attendance has been dropping since like 1944. And the first threat was, in Ireland, the first big threat was RTE radio, when radios became widespread. I know all this because my father spoke about it. So radios, that was the first big threat. And then television, of course.
Yeah.
And then colour television. And then the rise of pub lounges, believe it or not.
Wow, okay.
That was a threat to the cinemas. And then show bands, that was a threat in the 50s and 60s. People started going to dance halls much more. And then there's video, so there's always something, so, and this feels existential right now for cinema, streaming and AI, but it probably isn't,
Yeah, I think one of the big conversations that comes up amongst filmmakers, and even my pals who work in the industry, is the threat of AI. But it's never really been any different per se, has it? These concerns, because obviously VFX was, 25 years ago, and the advances of green screen was a major concern. But ultimately, it's storytelling and the connection with an audience, which always brings us back. And you can't, with authenticity and human emotion, can't be replicated. So there's moments, for example, in your film where there's, I don't want to give away any spoilers, but there's some beautiful moments of that communal interaction between people. Those moments that can't be faked because they're moments in time. They're moments between people, interactions between people that can't be replicated. How important was it for you to try and capture? Obviously, you have your protagonist and his relationships with people in his family, but also the kind of periphery characters interacting and making it as real as possible. Because there's several little moments where it's like, I remember that, I remember that, I remember that. How important were they in the story?
It was hugely important. I don't think it was something that I particularly was hugely conscious of, that I need to capture that reality. It was inherent within the whole concept anyway. If I was going to make a movie set in the cinema, I was going to make it as real and exactly as I remember it. Yeah. And so it's a great compliment that you could recognize moments in there, and that's something that I've noticed with this movie, is that people who are even too young to remember a world before corporatized cinema almost have this genetic memory of what it used to be. They kind of miss that experience, even though they never experienced it. So I'm hearing comments from people, what a wonderful nostalgic experience, from people who are way too young to be nostalgic about something that they didn't live through. So I think it touches something that's in our soul as Irish people, who are great cinema goers, the highest attendance in Europe consistently.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're to look at it from a Dublin perspective, I mean, from 1908 to the mid-40s, from O'Connell Street, there were 56 independently run cinemas.
Yeah. And James Joyce started the first one.
The Vault,
which is crazy.
Reference there in that picture behind you. But what is it about Irish audiences that love? Maybe it's just because Ireland is so difficult to some degree, where we need that escapism, or we need that communal experience more than most. Because our cinema attendance is right up there in Europe. It's one of the highest, if not the highest, in Europe, as you mentioned. So what is it about Irish cinema-going audiences that love the cinema so much?
I think one factor would be the weather.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's bad weather across Europe. It's not unique to Ireland. But the weather would be one factor. And certainly what drove people in the early days, the 30s, 40s, 50s, was just the poverty in Ireland, where people didn't have central heating, big families living in cramped conditions. So they went to the movies, you know. So it was a night out. You could get in out of the cold and everything, you know. My mother was just talking about that a few days ago. This movie has opened up all these conversations. So that was something that I didn't realize. So people went to the pictures just to get out of the cold and to get out of crowded tenements and crowded houses. And the other factor, I think, is Irish people, as in addition to our love of storytelling, Irish people are very cultured and very educated, you know, and we just seek out interesting storytelling and interesting, accessible art forms. And cinema has always been the most accessible art form. And I noticed that even in the town where I'm from, Cappamore in County Limerick, it's only a small place, and when the cinema that my grandfather opened up in 1942, when that closed after 39 years in business, it was the smallest population in Europe that still had its own independent cinema. And the people of Cappamore were always a little bit more savvy and worldly wise than the people in other neighbouring parishes and towns, and it was because of the cinema. You know,
They were a little bit more cultured,
Yeah.
or they
Yeah,
were
we
more
kinda-
willing to experiment.
Yeah,
in culture.
and we're familiar with the
Art.
movies of Louis Malle and, you know,
Yeah.
other great filmmakers, by accident, of course.
Oh, absolutely. Do you find that, you know, we're more empathetic maybe here on some level? I mean, in other characteristically, you know, if you're to look at, say, something like Live Aid, per capita, we're very giving.
Yeah.
You know, maybe we see more of the human spirit, I don't know, or maybe because we've been downtrodden, you know, imperialistically for X amount of years, or the psychological hangover from that.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
that has something to do with it on some level, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it does. I think there's many factors.
Aren't we great?
Yeah.
I'll just talk to you, just, you know, because this is primarily a filmmaker's podcast, just about your own experiences with creative endeavours. How do you write? How does that come to you? How do you build a story? How many times do you revise, and how do you engage with that process?
I always consider myself first and foremost a director.
Yeah.
But I consider myself a director cursed with the ability to write, because I mean it's a blessing, you know, and a curse. But because it's a curse in the sense that you spend your whole life feeling you have homework, you know. So there's always a script hanging over you. So you spend your whole life feeling guilty because you're not writing. I find writing very hard, but it's something I'm always compelled to do. I don't write every day by any stretch of the imagination. When I do write, I feel it takes something out of me, you know. So I only write when I really have to, and it better be a real deadline, because I'll know if it's not. But for me, it all starts with a concept. You know, because I kind of think in terms of movies, just because of my background, the way my brain was molded growing up, being exposed to so many movies. So I always think about concept first and foremost.
So it's a visual formation of images.
Not so much that. It's more like a story with a hook. You know, if I can identify a beginning, a middle, an end, then I know I can write it. That gets me excited. Like there are many stories, you know, people will pitch them to you, or I'll think of them myself and I'll go, okay, well, that's a good first act, but then what happens? You know, so the best movies always come to me with a beginning, middle, and end, you know. And then, you know, and only then will I sit down and actually tackle it. And my first drafts can be, you know, really, really long. You know, I'll outline it. Yeah, I will start with an outline. The first movie I wrote, I didn't have an outline. And after about 500 pages, when I still hadn't hit the first turning point, I stopped. That was the movie Cowboys Angels. But my first drafts are usually quite long. And then I just worked through many, many, many drafts. With this movie, I think it was about 27 drafts or something like that. And I usually work with script editors.
Do you find them valuable?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, there's a great reluctance to work with them, but when you work through Screen Ireland, and if you get media development money, you're kind of railroaded into working with script editors. I find them valuable in the sense that they're like a Formula One engineer, in that I'm the Formula One driver. I can drive the car, but the engineer can't drive the car, but they can tell me how to fix it, or they can fix it. So a good script editor they'll usually augment what you're doing as opposed to getting you to change it. I've worked with bad script editors and I've worked with good script editors, and a good script editor is invaluable. But the way I look at it is it's kind of fast track development, because you work with them and you come to conclusions that you probably get to yourself, but it might take you about 5 years, whereas a good script editor will shorten that process. And it's always good to have feedback, constructive feedback.
Well, they ask questions, right? They pose
They ask
questions,
and they make you question yourself and push deeper and deeper into it. And if you and they're able to articulate what concerns them, A lot of people will give you feedback, but they can't articulate exactly what they're bumping against.
Yeah.
So it's so valuable to get that feedback, and I welcome that. And if I have to pay for it, I'll frickin' pay for it. So that's the way I look upon a script editor, because you realise once you've made a movie that, for instance, like it's now Thursday, April 30th, the movie comes out tomorrow. So tomorrow I'll open every paper and over the weekend, and there'll be reviews of the movie, all reviewing the script, And you learn very fast when your first movie comes out that, you might as well get that process over while I can still change it.
Yeah.
Because the worst thing is reading a review that says something that you agree with, but it's too late to change it now.
That's the hard part, isn't it? But it's never finished, is it?
No,
you never get to a point where you're completely happy with any creative endeavour. Surely. So it's surrendering yourself to the tide of that to a degree.
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
Because if you don't free yourself up for the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, what I've found is that with every process, with every project, there's usually something I'm not happy with, and it becomes a little thorn in the sole of your foot, which becomes worse and worse until eventually you're tortured by that thing. And the only way to get over it is to make another movie and be tortured by that, and then good,
Yeah, but it's, the reward is, it's cliched, but making the film. And then things, any piece of art is judged differently with time.
Yeah.
Also as well.
Totally. And it's a peculiar profession in that you make a product and you really do put it out into the world where you're totally exposed, to invite criticism. And I think as artists, we're the least ill-equipped people to do that, because we're all sensitive artists, So it's a kind of a profession that kicks the shit out of you, in a sense.
Since you've mentioned that, we ask everybody that comes on the show about, particularly, experienced filmmakers and writers and directors, about rejection. I don't think anybody is particularly good with it, but you get used to it to some degree. How is it for you? We spoke a little bit before we came on, a little bit about that, but what's your approach to that? How do you react to rejection? And what does that mean to you?
Yeah, it really is part of the process, It really is part of the process. Yeah. And it's a cliche, as they say, but, the cliche is it's not how you handle rejection. No, it's not about being rejected, it's how you deal with it, or words to that effect. And I'm married to my producer, Natalie, and we kind of started in this game together, in that we both learned our various crafts together. I always say she could do what I do, probably, but I couldn't begin to do what she does. And I don't know where she learned it along the way, because I was with her, but she's totally, surpassed me. And right from the very start, we kind of went in straight away with a feature. I don't think we ever applied to Screen Ireland with a short film. And right from the very start, we were rejected, and then we got Screen Ireland funding. And to this day, someone asked me yesterday, what's my greatest high in this industry? And I had to say it was the first time I got Screen Ireland funding, development funding. It wasn't like selling a script, it wasn't making a movie or whatever. I'll just never forget that high when I got Irish Film Board development funding for my first film, because I always thought they'll never give it to me, they only give it to whoever. And I couldn't believe they'd given it to me, and it really felt like a door had been pushed open. So I'll never forget that. But yeah, I mean, so Natalie and I, that was a long journey trying to get our first feature off the ground. And we had so many rejections. We got co-producers on board and then got a phone call from the co-producer saying, sorry, I couldn't get any money off the Danish film board, so I'm out. And so then the whole thing had fallen apart. And Natalie and I even had a name for our thing that we used to do. We used to go for the walk of shame, we used to call it. Even though it wasn't shame, but we just called it that. And the walk of shame was basically where we were so freaking depressed and we just go for a walk. Yeah. And we go, come on, let's do the walk of shame. So we did that so often. And it never changes. After I'd met Cowboys and Angels, it was in cinemas, it was doing very well. And we got a letter from the Irish Film Board saying that we were rejected for our next movie, which is a real kick in the teeth. But we fought back, we changed it, and they came on board, So it's never over until it's over, but it's always part of the process. Even with this movie, movie right now, we got rejected by Screen Ireland initially when we applied for development.
Sure.
And we just went back to them repeatedly. We kept changing it. You have to change it significantly, but we kept changing it. And eventually, we were lucky and they came on board, and I think everyone is happy. But, for all the time Screen Ireland has supported me, I think there's an equal amount of times where they haven't, But it's just par for the course, it really is.
Yeah, it's that Charles Bukowski thing, isn't it? That quote, what matters most is how we walk through the fire kind of thing. Rejection obviously is a huge part of life, and a lot of filmmakers that watch and listen to this show are dealing with that on various different levels. But how do you reconstruct that and put it back into the work? I mean, it's, there's a lot of kind of micro struggles and subcultures within not only the Irish film and TV industry, but also, all around the world in different areas and so on. How do you turn that into fuel? It very much does become fuel. Yeah, that's kind of what fires me. Yeah. I'll show them. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. And I recently, I gave a director's masterclass in Limerick to a bunch of young filmmakers. And the supports that they have, just the training resources, that they have are phenomenal and great. There's a wonderful new generation coming up. But they have access to so much equipment and so many schemes and so many short film schemes, etc. That I don't know they were born, huh? Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to say that because their struggles are still the same. Oh, absolutely, as are ours. Yeah. No, that's not the point I would make. But the point I was making, and I wondered this to myself, is I'm not sure I would have made the movies I've made if I had had that kind of support, because what kind of fueled me and leads to us having this conversation is exactly that attitude of it's me against the entire world, and that leads to a certain fire, that puts a certain fire in your belly that's necessary, to break through, because to make a movie, it's not just Screen Ireland. You need to get on board. There are many, many moving pieces, that come into a feature film. Obviously, with international co-production and, exactly. One challenge is replaced by another. Yeah, and all the movies that we've done are all international co-productions. Yeah, I think that what happens in this country is people get obsessed with the first step on the ladder without considering a lot of moving parts in and around that. Just very quickly about directing, and we'll jump into the film then thereafter quickly. How does one direct? How do you direct? What does that mean to you? Directing for me is something that's directing is kind of what I do. It comes instinctually to me and comes very easily. For me, my process is I write the best screenplay I can. And then I'm able to, once it is as good as I can possibly make it, then I start storyboarding it. And I've got quite a good visual sense, so I'm able to visualize the entire movie.
So I storyboarded and I draw every single shot. And I do that without a DP, before a DP is even hired. I don't do it with any DP. And I've always worked with different DPs on every movie, usually because it's an international co-production and you usually end up getting your DP from Belgium or Germany or somewhere. So I'm not one of those people that stands on the film set and goes, okay, where will we put the camera? I usually kind of know. But that's just my style. There's nothing wrong with that style.
Does that
either.
speed things up for you when you're working, workflow-wise? Because
very much. It's almost like a different way of rewriting the script. That's me rewriting the script and getting to know it intimately from a visual perspective. Yeah. And that also sometimes leads me to go back and revise the screenplay as well. But it just means that by the time a crew does come on board and everything, I know exactly what we're doing and I'm able to answer everyone's questions. And I usually have all this work done before we're even in pre-production. And usually in pre-production, I'm like sitting around, I've nothing to do, really, when people say that's your busiest time. And I will usually sit down and go through all of my storyboards with a DP. Yeah. But I usually find they're bored shitless and don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But anyway, the bottom line is I'm never a slave to those storyboards. It come, when you arrive on set and the set is different, of course, but at least I have a plan and I know roughly what the rhythm of the scene is, And it helps me sleep at night, I wouldn't be able to sleep if I didn't have a plan,
Yeah, I think that based particularly on the film, the way it's shot, and there's a lot of kind of moving parts and movement shots. So I can see how you would work that way because you've planned through it all, meticulously said we're going to come up here, move down there, pull back there, and it's quite seamless in the film, which to me would be very frightening watching it because you always have that analytical kind of filmmaker practical eye on things. Yeah. So from my point of view, the practical elements were very well thought out, which is not easy in a big operation of a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
So kudos for that. That was really fascinating to watch from an analytical point of view and a filmmaker.
Yeah, we shot that movie in 20 days.
Wow.
Yeah, 4 weeks.
Yeah. Just about the production design on it was really flawless as well.
Tracy O'Hanlon, our production designer.
Incredible. Yeah. You really felt as if you were there. You really felt you could feel the cigarette smoke.
Yeah.
You could smell it almost.
I watch it now and I'm like, wow, how did I get the extras to do all that? I kind of forget because it was such an arduous shoot and so fast that you really didn't have time to take in what the extras are doing, And I look at it now and I'm like, man, they were so good.
They were. Like there was lots of moments where they were interacting very organically with what was happening, and in no way am I saying that you're kind of herding sheep or anything, but they were a character in themselves, which is important.
And all the cigarette smoking is hilarious. Yeah, everyone is
smoking
continuously.
All the lovely little moments in it. I'll just talk to you about casting.
Yeah,
we all know how casting works, particularly filmmakers. It's difficult. Even when you get what you want, it's difficult.
Yeah.
How did you go about casting this? Obviously, you wanted to give one or two people a shot at something as well.
Yeah.
Some talented young people. How was that process for you? How did you land upon Colin?
Yeah. In Ireland, it's very difficult right now because I think it's always been difficult because there's a lot of talent in Ireland, but we're a small country. And so anyone that's got a name right now, they're all A-list. So you're not going to get them.
So they're almost inaccessible.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, they are inaccessible. Yeah. It's funny. You call up Donald Gleeson's agency, and you go, "Hi, can I speak to name of agent?"
Yes.
And they go, "He's not available right now. Is this about Donald Gleeson?" And you go, "Yes." He's not available.
And that's it.
And that's the end of your conversation. So it's like you kind of get the impression that guy who answers the phone, his whole job is to field calls saying Donald Gleeson is not available.
Yeah.
But so you've got kind of the complete A-list, and I mean the A-list in Hollywood, or kind of nobodies, and or people, you know, who haven't yet met a name come through. I don't mean nobody's. That sounds disparaging, but you know, so Colin was pretty much the only one on our list, you know, who's in that between place. You know, he's such an incredible actor, you know, but hasn't had that kind of lead to break through yet. So if Colin hadn't come on board, you know, it would have been a struggle, you know, to find someone in any ways good. So luckily Colin came on board, and he's very discerning. You know, Colin is a pure actor. You know, he really is. He really is the real deal. He's the kind of guy you don't particularly get to know him, you know, outside of what he presents himself as in the film. You know,
That's good, right?
Say again?
That's good, right?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So that's what I mean by just a pure actor. And then, the rest of them, I was very keen to, you know, to populate it with as many kind of new, fresh faces as possible. And it's quite a large cast, and there's some great new faces in it, like that young girl, Kate, who plays the character of Kate. Her name is Clara Crichton. She's from Cork. She'd never been in anything before, but she just blew me away in her audition. And then there's Daniel Woodage, the guy with the red hair. He plays Vincent. Everyone loves him. This is also his first movie.
Wow, okay.
And Ryan Burke, you know, he's fantastic as well. He's been in a few things, but a tremendous actor. I'm really, really happy with the cast in this. Yeah, I think we really nailed every part, you know.
What was it like taking it, you know, back home for the Dublin Film Festival? Dublin audience, home-ish audience. And having, you know, anyone that I know that was there was saying that everybody was incredibly engrossed, loved it, heartwarming, what cinema's all about. What is it like and what does it mean? Not just to make films about where you're from or what you're passionate about, but to actually sit in an audience and watch it with people and have them, because we know the difference between when people enjoy stuff and when they don't, you know. But it must be very gratifying when people come out and they go, Jesus, there's one particular scene in it that's really moving for me. I won't spoil it for people. What's it like when an audience genuinely comes up to you and they're like, oh my God, that was, you know. It's what it's all about, right? Yeah,
it's incredibly gratifying, but I don't think I'm quite there yet, because I never quite, I don't know. It's kind of like a wedding, you know?
Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah,
thanks.
Exactly. You know, and you have very short conversations with like 1 million people. And I'm still kind of too close to the movie. You know, for me, it's like, how dare you watch my film? That's a private thing. You know, so I still haven't quite let it go, you know? Yeah. And it's the last thing I kind of want to talk about as well. It's like, it's just, you feel still a little self-conscious with the movie because you're just so close to it. You know, I'll begin to chill out and relax a little bit more in a few months, but it is incredibly gratifying, you know, and I do get the sense that people react to it very well emotionally, because I know when people don't like something, they kind of avoid you, don't say anything, you know. But no, it is, I don't mean to appear ungrateful or dismissive. No, it is very gratifying, but I find it very hard to discern real compliments. You know, it's probably the Irish in me, you know, the Irish Catholic.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, there has been some reviews so far, and they've all been incredibly positive. I can see it being a film that people recommend, and it's not necessarily for an older audience, although you can see why they would enjoy it. It's the type of film that, and I mean this in the best possible way. You know, I've a couple of kids. The type of film that you'd sit them down to watch, and I mean, and everybody would enjoy. Yeah. And films like that really live forever. You know.
I mean, it's funny. It's a movie. It's a period movie, and I didn't set out to make a period movie. You know, I thought, I'm making a film. It's set in the 80s, which is just a few years ago. But then you realise, man, it's like 4 decades ago.
Just 40
totally,
years
it's
ago.
Insane. But going back to a point that you made earlier regarding AI, and that occurred to me with this movie actually through a conversation that was had at the Dublin Film Festival. You know, the future of cinema and AI. I think AI probably could do a formulaic studio tentpole movie.
Yeah.
You know, like a Marvel movie or whatever, because just by virtue of the fact that there's so much material data you can feed into an AI, you know, stacks of comics going back decades. But I think maybe, you know, if AI becomes a thing, and I feel it will, it's inevitable. You know, there's certain movies it could write, and, you know, if it can save a buck, studios will save a buck. But there are also certain movies that it can't write. And maybe the rise of AI will give rise to a more deeply felt human films, you know, such as this movie, you know, because this movie could not possibly be written by AI in its current form because AI doesn't have access to what it was like in rural County Limerick in the 1980s from the perspective of a gormless teenager. You know, so that this movie could only come from a human, you know. So maybe the rise of AI will give rise to movies where we strive to replicate human emotions that artificial intelligence can't replicate. You know, maybe that'll be the challenge for us going forward.
Yeah. It can't, like, there's nuance and you know, moments of in the minutiae of this movie which are intrinsically Irish but intrinsically human and universal. I can't recommend this enough to people to bring not only kind of your filmmaking pals, but bring people along to remind them why we love the cinema, but most importantly why we love going to the cinema.
Yeah.
Stanley Townsend is one of my favourite actors, by the way.
Okay. Yeah, Stanley's wonderful.
He's incredible. How do you find working with Irish actors in comparison to international actors?
I think actors are actors. You know, they're kind of their own breed.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the individual.
Okay.
It depends on the role. But there's so much talent in Ireland. And I love working with talented people. And the choice that we had to make in this movie was, you know, working with a few newcomers in a demanding role, you know, within a tight schedule and budget, is always a risk, you know, because we had a choice, you know, with certain roles, whether to go with a more experienced actor or someone, and this was their first time. And when you go with a more experienced actor, and I learned this particularly in the last movie I did with Stephen Dorff and Melissa George, where we got caught for time one night. And so I had about 10 shots lined up, and we had about 5 minutes to do them. So I said, okay, forget all that. We're going to do everything in one take on a Steadicam. And so I had to tell Stephen and Melissa, okay, this is what we're doing. You need to hit this mark, you need to sit here, then you need to say that line, then you need to walk over here, hit this mark and that mark. And anyway, we did the shot, and they were able to do it all perfectly because they have thousands of hours of experience, you know. Yeah. So good, experienced actors will save your ass.
Yeah.
You know, because when you're running out of time, they'll nail it perfectly. Whereas if you work with first-timers, they won't always hit their marks perfectly, and it can cost you time, you know. And on a tight schedule, as most independent Irish movies are, you know, that can be that can be your undoing.
Yeah.
So that was a risk we took with this, but on this movie by working with so many inexperienced actors. But, you know, at the end of the day, you just go, oh, fuck it. You know, they're just too perfect for the role. We'll take our chances and hope there is a God. And turns out there is a God.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I'm excited for the next batch of Irish actors coming up because there's some real stars out there.
Yeah, we keep continually punching above our weight.
We really do.
One last question before I let you go. Is there a piece of advice that you'd give to yourself, knowing what you know now, looking back at the start of your filmmaking journey?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I would say write much more. Don't take years between projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Guys, thanks so much for watching the show, supporting Film Network Ireland. Speaking of supporting creative endeavours, I suggest that you go along to the cinema and see Once Upon a Time in a cinema. It's out this weekend, 1st of May. Support Irish film, not because it's Irish, but because it's good, and invite along a friend. Thank you so much, Mr. David Gleeson.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a real pleasure.
And congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for listening and watching.
Okay, cheers, mate.